early movers in the technology space for what we now call tours and activities. There's a different way of labeling it all the time. In-destination spending, getting to the Eiffel Tower, doing a boat tour, basically remote selling, Keats type of products. But you're one of the early innovators in that space.
Not only am I an early innovator, but in 2012 I was there when 4 of us decided that was what the industry was going to be called. So I actually named the industry.
And it stuck.
It did stuck. It stuck.
Yes.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Let's rewind a little bit from that. So I would qualify you as a travel tech geek. I'm a little bit of a geek myself, but I'm not as much of a geek as you are, maybe, Alex.
Oh,
what was the origin story for your first travel product, TourCMS?
Well, actually, there's a company that predates that. So I've got a degree in computer science. So a long time ago I graduated, 1995. And the first thing I did after graduation was drive from London to Kathmandu on a truck that we had bought with some friends from university. So that took 4 months. And then a few years later, some of those same friends got together and I thought, oh, we could run this as a business, as an overland expedition business. So we ended up, that was my first startup in about 99, 2000. We had 4 overland expedition trucks driving London to Kathmandu, Istanbul to Cairo, taking backpackers on these kind of trips. And what happened was we didn't really make any money. Well, most startups didn't make any money, but that really didn't make any money. But where we did make some money was when we managed to get people to Cairo or to Kathmandu, and we could then sell these customers day tours and experiences on top of the 5-week expedition that they'd just been on. So I really got into selling day tours then. And because I had a degree in computer science, I thought, oh, I can actually build a system to sell this. And so I thought, okay, let's just spend a few weekends writing some code. And of course, those few weekends turned into 15 years of hell of running TourCMS, which was the earliest reservation platform for tours and activities. So it really started out as just doing it because I knew how to write code and I needed something to sell stuff online. I mean, that business itself wasn't massively innovative in terms of technology or anything, but we were described at the time as the first UK tour operator to go brochureless. And the truth of it was we didn't have any money to have a brochure. So we were in 2000, we were just trading online, no brochures, and that was, we started from that. So that was kind of, I guess that was innovative in its own way, but that was sort of innovation number 1. And then TourCMS continued. We gained more and more multi-day kind of tour companies and a few day tour companies. And really, I was the early developer, writing all the code, and then eventually, sort of a few years later, forward wind 12 years, in 2012, Greyline, the largest sightseeing company in the world, decided to move their 100 businesses onto our platform. And at that point, we were sort of the largest tours and activities distribution platform globally, which seems quite a sort of a step forward from spending a couple of weekends writing some code to sell a few things in Cairo.
So, just before I continue, can everybody hear? Alex, okay. So, there was kind of a native platform there. You had built this excursion business that you needed to sell the in-destination bit. So you had this kind of launch platform for making your first dollar, basically.
It was, the platforms that I looked at the time, this is really going back in history, was a platform called OS Commerce. I don't know if anyone can remember that. And that was a shopping cart tool that you installed onto web servers. So we originally wrote TourCMS as a bit of software that you could put onto your own web servers. But then in 2007, we transitioned it to being software as a service. So we had it all centrally hosted, which made tech a lot easier to run the tech, but also a lot harder because you were then suddenly responsible for, we were doing $250 million a year bookings, and it was me writing all the code.
So we have to think of this as being scary. The kind of the wild west of the travel internet that you were starting out in. There wasn't really. You described it first as a product that was a SaaS product. This was never heard of before. Were people seeking you out back then, or was this something that you had to go and bang on doors and say, do you need a booking platform?
Well, I described it as toothbrushes because everyone needed something to sell everyone needed a reservation system in some kind. So yes, people, tour companies seeked us out to say we need a system, and that was okay. We managed to get quite a lot of traction on that. But fundamentally, our traction came from countries that did not have their own software local superstars. So, for example, we were doing very well in the Pacific Islands, in Kathmandu, and in other places that really didn't have their local software companies, but we had no foothold in New Zealand, Hawaii, USA, because if you were a USA tour operator, you'd go to a USA software company. We just couldn't get into it.
Was it the fact that there were local providers, or was it tied to the DMOs in those markets? Was there that level of...
Well, initially, it was certainly in the UK market. It was this horrible thing called view data, which was something that people used to use to connect to high street travel agents. So every country had their version of that. So you would end up being a national software provider just purely because you needed to get into the national networks of travel agents. So no one was globalized. Everyone was, so-and-so country's best, but not global.
How long was it before you had a copycat?
So it was us and Resgo in 2007, and then most of the copycats came in about 2012 in Tours and Activities.
Okay. So thinking back between that moment, so there was a hunger there. There was a waiting market. The timing was good. Product was good.
Timing was early.
Okay.
And in fact, that was a problem because by the time that the companies like Fair Harbour and Broken, if you know those in Tours and Activities, got up to full steam, our code base was already too old. So we were early mover, and we actually, our code base was not reactive enough. So we actually lost the ultimate battle, but because we were too early and our tech was too old.
It's hard to change, to reinvent. So thinking back though to...
I should have actually sacked half the customers at that time, but I wasn't courageous enough.
That's an interesting point because when to pivot with an active code base when it's running, it's almost like writing a new product with the constraints of keeping the old one going. It's incredible. As any airline reservation system hack would tell you, but I want to talk just between that moment when you were maybe a little bit early, but you had some early traction, you had some early adoption, early movement. I remember the Grey Line deal. That was a big moment for you guys. I remember following you back at the time. It was a big deal. Where did the rest of the traction come from, or was that really the catalyst?
So we were first mover software as a service, and then we were first mover connecting reservation systems to the online travel agents. So TourCMS was first to connect to Get Your Guide, Expedia, Vulture, Tour Radar, Hotel Beds. So all of the big OTAs, apart from Viator, came to us to connect to local tour and activity data first. So we got traction because we
came with volume.
We got volume and distribution. So yeah.
So from an operator's perspective, let's say you had a scuba company in the Pacific Islands or whatever, a coach company, you'd go to you because you had all the interconnects built already.
Scuba diving would be an interesting one. Coach company more obvious because the bigger online travel agents are all hotel bookers, and so therefore they're all kind of big cities retail. If you've got something in a Pacific Island, you're really not going to get any bookings from an OTA. You might think you'll get a few, but you're not going to get them.
I should clarify that maybe because we have the idea of a tour and an activity. The two go hand in hand. What's the difference?
Okay. Well, there's four words, three or four words that float around here. An activity is something that's kind of uses some kind of human energy, I guess. A tour tends to be a multi-stop experience of a location, so it can be going from one place to the next place to the next place. And then you have sightseeing, which is definitely multi-stop. Then you have experience, and then you have there's too many words. And so this whole problem with this whole market is that we've called it tours and activities, and it's not. So I've recently tried to rename it as sightseeing and experiences, not having a lot of success, but I'm pushing this sightseeing and experiences new word because it's much more specific around what we are than tours and activities. But tours is much more tourism, and activities can be whitewater rafting, which might also be sold to locals.
Okay.
If you buy a ticket to go swimming in Dublin, you wouldn't classify that as a tourism experience, but it might be an activity.
Thinking back again to I just want to talk about the one quote I remember from you from a long time ago. It was back in the early stages for you. You had a kind of a new type of product. You had all of the interconnects coming from, or interconnects outwards to Expedia and the OTAs. You described yourself as the CTO for 100 companies.
Yeah.
Was that because, like, we're thinking about small companies that don't natively have an IT team, an accounting team, they'd outsource a lot of that. Were you there out of necessity, or were you there because you had to explain it to such a degree?
I think it's fundamentally, most of these companies are small. People get into local experience provision because they're passionate about creating amazing local product, and not because they're wanting to run a office-based business. If you look at, for example, a hotel manager who decides to run an independent hotel, the chances are they will have worked in bookings at some point because they will be working on the front desk. Whereas if you look at a local tour company, the chances are that the person has been a tour guide, or they've been a mountain bike guide, or they've been, whatever it is. As soon as you say, oh, you're going to run your own business, they're suddenly going, but the reason why I'm running a mountain bike tour company is because I want to ride my mountain bike. And you're like, you're going to sit behind your desk for 8 hours a day. They're like, oh, I hadn't quite thought about that. So they needed a lot more help, because not only did they not have any technology skills, but they had no energy to spend any time looking at anything digital at all, because they just wanted to be tour guides who were now accidentally running their own businesses.
Is there a threat from large aggregation platforms turning into the in-destination experience provider directly? Could, for example, Expedia or Last Minute or any of the big brands run the coaches directly? The differences between capital and non-capital based experiences. So there's unlikely that they would run tour buses, because that requires having tour buses or leasing tour buses or renting tour buses, although TripAdvisor Vital has tried it. But it's much more likely in tours, where it's like a walking tour around a city centre or a food tour, because there's no capital involved. You can just put a brand on top of an itinerary and sell it. You don't have to have any assets to do that. So that's the reason why tours are actually in threat from those platforms, but activities and attractions are not. Because you buy kayaks.
Yes,
you're safe.
There's no capital. So, however, there's a little bit of a however. Yeah, at this moment in time, if there's capital investment required, the platforms are staying away from it.
I want to talk about the end of your journey with TourCMS. It's still an operating business.
Yep.
I think Keith is a user of TourCMS.
It's actually the world's largest platform still.
Wow.
Now.
Can you talk a little bit about the numbers around the time that
Yes.
so it was around 2015 that you sold the business?
End of 2015, so it's just coming up to 4 years now.
Well, congratulations, by the way. You were an exited entrepreneur. What was the scale of the business at that stage?
So we were doing $250 million a year.
Wow.
Which at the time was the largest. I mean, people like Fair Harbour, Boken, quite well known, but Fair Harbour's recently exited to Booking Holdings, Boken to TripAdvisor. They've got around those numbers, or maybe less. But at that time, 2015, we were the largest.
Wow. So this was the moment where I thought, that's it for Alex now. He's going to buy the yacht.
Yes.
You live in Southampton, or used to at the time,
Yeah.
so you're close to the water. I expected the full yacht retirement for you.
And I am actually a professionally qualified yacht skipper, so I really should have bought a yacht.
Okay, but the yacht wasn't enough for you.
But the joke of it is, and this is going to sound very bad, so please don't say this outside the room, I know it's on video, but in TourCMS, money got a bit short halfway through. In fact, it was short nearly all the way through. I actually had to sell my yacht to pay salaries. Now, I tell you, you tell that story and everyone's like, that's not a very good story to tell. I'm like, okay, fine, I won't tell it again. But that was, that was how bad it was. I mean, it was actually a lot worse than that. But so that was really as bad as it was. Literally just clean out all your assets.
The early days of any company, the end of month salary payroll.
I mean, that's funny. I mean, but not that funny. But what's not funny is going into supermarkets to buy your weekly shop and not sure if you're going to be able to get out of the shop for your food. That's not funny, and that happened more often than I needed. So that's, you're running a business that's doing several $100 million a year bookings, and you can't even buy food in the supermarket. So you've got that quite right.
At the end of the day, though, you did it all without a major debt story.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of incredible. So
when I sold, I still had 97% equity.
Wow.
And that's mainly from being a sole founder, a sole technology founder.
The thing that I'm struggling with, Alex, and this makes up for the second part of the conversation, really, but you got the yacht back, I assume, eventually. Or you had money for it anyway, let's say that. But you exited to Palace's Swiss company, and at that point, it's pretty much done for you and TourCMS. You had the earn-out. What was day one like after TourCMS?
Day one was jumping on a plane to Las Vegas because I had to go to Las Vegas and deliver a project for 6 months.
Okay.
So I kept on doing that, but that was one of the most interesting projects to be done. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to have to keep working for TourCMS. Let's at least go and do something interesting.
But the motor, the wheel, I think the wheel was still turning. You had this kind of I think it's common to a real technologist that you'll keep sticking with technology. You'll keep looking at something new.
Well, the next business I tried setting up afterwards was a food discovery app. So I thought, okay, I'll build an app, food discovery. But one of the things that I realised about that was it was a marketing problem, not a technology problem. And I soon realised that actually I'm a technologist, not a marketer. So I decided very quickly that I wasn't. I built the app, it was fine. But I was like, okay, how are we going to scale that? Can't scale it. This is a marketing problem, and I'm a technologist.
You were still going.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity kind of sitting there. I can only describe it as a moonshot, Alex.
Yeah.
Food wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
You decided to take a look at self-driving tours.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Okay, so I thought, okay, so one of the things we did with TourCMS was we were very, very early to the market. And in fact, I'd spent 5 years going around to travel industry conferences, a bit like this evening, describing that online travel agents should connect to reservation platforms. In 5 years, the door was shut in my face. Everyone said, no, we'll just continue sending Excel spreadsheets to everyone. Whatever,
Excel hasn't gone away.
So I was like, yeah, okay. So I was like, okay, if this is what you really want to do, that's what you can do. So I thought, okay, well that worked. So I thought, okay, well what's the next thing that's going to come in 5-10 years' time? And I put it down to 3 things. So one was blockchain, one was augmented reality, virtual reality, and the other was self-driving cars. And so I looked at blockchain, I went to a few blockchain conferences, and thought, what the heck is going on here? I have no idea what anyone's talking about. And I thought, I do not want to spend the next 5 years talking about this. And then I looked at augmented reality, virtual reality, and I thought, well, this is a content problem. I'm not really a content kind of person. I'm not like an editorial kind of person. I think this is a content problem. It's not really kind of me. And I looked at autonomous cars. I thought, right, that's it. So I thought, right, I'm going to be happy spending the next 10 years of my life talking about autonomous cars. That sounds more fun. Even though I go to car conferences, I've got no idea what anyone's talking about when it comes to cars, but that's another issue. It's just the next thing. So if you create the list of what are the things that are fundamentally change the sightseeing industry over the next 5-10 years, it will be those 3 things. And so I just chose it by default.
You've gone now. I don't know how much of this you want to talk about, but I know we've chatted privately about it. How far into self-driving have you gone?
Yeah, so we've got 3 products. So the first product is you will get into an Uber autonomous car and take a Marriott branded experience, i.e. we're putting the travel brand on top of the vehicle brand. And so that enables, just now we were talking about in-flight experiences. Well, the difference between the in-flight experience that you could sell as from being sat in your seat on the aeroplane, and what we can do is that we can deliver an on-the-ground experience in that airline brand in an Uber autonomous vehicle. So that's product 1, which I think will be interesting for hotels and airlines to put their brand down. The second is we've got our own vehicle designed, which is a 6-seater autonomous vehicle, and we're going to put that on a franchise model. So we want to put 10,000 of those out on the streets in the next handful of years. So we want 200 cities to buy 50 each. And that will deliver a sightseeing experience. That effectively replaces the hop-on, hop-off bus. So companies like City Sightseeing that have got 3,000 or 4,000, you can be a franchisee, I'll give you a good deal. Companies like City Sightseeing got 3,000 or 4,000 vehicles, Greyline have got about 3,000 or 4,000 hop-on, hop-off buses. You think a hop-on, hop-off bus will be replaced by 3 or 4 6-seaters. So that's our product number 2, is our own vehicle, which we'll franchise. And then product 3, which, because autonomous vehicles is a little bit science fiction, although I call it science fact, but everyone else calls it science fiction. But anyway,
it has a
yeah, it has a little bit of it. Well, it's called the giggle factor. When someone first talk about it, everyone's first reaction is to giggle. At which point you're like, no one's really taking me seriously. So you're like, okay, that's called the giggle factor. So we have a very high giggle factor with autonomous